Welcome to another deep dive, everybody. This time, we're going deep into the world of notaries public here in Wisconsin.
Right.
We'll be using a couple of key documents from the Wisconsin Department of Financial Institutions as our guides for this deep dive. Those are the DeFi Notary Public General Information and the Notary Handbook.
Yeah.
Now, you might be thinking, notary stuff. Sounds a little dry, right?
Maybe.
But trust me on this one, it's way more interesting than you might think.
Oh, for sure. It really is.
We're talking about preventing fraud, making sure legal documents are handled properly.
Yeah, I mean, this is really about like safeguarding identities,
Certainly.
upholding the integrity of agreements.
Yeah.
Like it's the foundation of trust in a lot of legal and financial transactions.
Yeah, for sure. So our mission for this deep dive is to basically equip you with the knowledge that you need to confidently handle those basic notarial tasks.
Right.
We're going to be focusing specifically on acknowledgments and unsworn statements today. So imagine this. Someone walks into your office, needs you to notarize a document. Where do you even begin?
Okay, well, even before we get to the specific steps, it's super important to understand the difference between an acknowledgment and an unsworn statement.
Okay.
An acknowledgment it's a much more formal declaration.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about witnessing a signature.
Right.
It's about verifying the signer's identity, making sure they actually understand the document that they're signing,
Right.
and confirming that they're signing it voluntarily.
It's like a safeguard just in case somebody says, oh, I was tricked into signing this. I didn't know what it was.
Exactly. And that's why the Notarial Ceremonies section of the handbook lays out very specific steps for this process.
Right.
And it helps ensure that it's all done consistently and legally across the board.
Makes sense.
Oh.
Okay, so let's get into those steps. Someone comes in needing an acknowledgement.
Yeah.
What's the first thing you got to do?
First thing's got to be presence. The signer has to be physically present
Okay.
before the notary,
Gotcha.
either in person or through like approved remote technology.
So no signing ahead of time and dropping it off later.
Nope, can't do that.
They got to be there.
Yeah.
You got to watch them sign.
You got it. Got to eliminate that chance of forgery.
Right, of somebody else signing for them.
Exactly, yeah.
All right, makes sense. So the signer's there in front of you. Now what? How do you know it's actually them?
Identification.
Yeah.
We got to verify their identity, and we do that using a valid photo ID that includes a signature.
Okay.
The handbook, it uses a driver's license as an example, but, there's other forms of government-issued ID that would work.
So I'm picturing the notary, like, really studying that ID,
Right.
right? Looking at the photo, checking the signature, making sure everything matches up.
Absolutely, yeah. Got to make sure it's not expired, that it looks real,
Yeah.
and that, the photo actually matches the person who's handing it to you.
Right. It's like being a detective. You got to be on the lookout for fake IDs and anything suspicious.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Notaries are in a position of trust. So that means being vigilant, right?
Yeah.
Aware of those potential red flags.
All right. So we've got presence, we've got identification. What's next in this notarial ceremony?
No, we got to make sure they know what they're signing.
I've always wondered about that.
Yeah.
Like, isn't it their responsibility to read the document, to understand what they're signing?
Right.
Where does the notary's responsibility kind of begin and end there?
That's a great question. And it really highlights like the important role of the notary.
Okay.
They're not there to give legal advice, but they do need to confirm that the signer is aware of the document's kind of general purpose and make sure they aren't signing something, under false pretenses.
Okay, so let's say someone's signing a deed to transfer ownership of a property. The notary wouldn't have to explain all the legal details,
Right.
but they'd want to make sure that the signer knows that they're giving up ownership.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's about making sure there's no confusion about the basic nature of the document.
Okay, so how does the notary actually do that, confirm that understanding?
So the handbook actually gives some specific language for this. The notary might say something like, I need to make sure you understand what kind of document you're signing and that you're signing it for the purpose it's intended for. Do you have any questions about this document or what it means?
That's pretty clear. Gives the signer a chance to speak up if something's not right. Now, what if they do have questions about what's in the document?
Well, that's where the notary has to kind of draw a line.
Right.
Can't provide legal advice. So they might suggest that the signer talk to an attorney.
Okay, right. You're there to witness and verify, not to be a lawyer.
Right.
Okay, so the signer confirms, they get it, They understand what they're signing, and it seems like nobody's forcing them to do this.
Right.
What's the next step?
Next step is making sure that they are acting voluntarily. They can't be under any duress or coercion.
Yeah, that seems especially important if you're dealing with, like, vulnerable individuals.
Oh, absolutely.
Or where there's a power imbalance between the people signing.
For sure. Imagine someone being pressured by, a family member or a business partner to sign something they don't want to.
Yeah.
The notary's there to observe, right?
Right.
Look at their demeanor, their body language, and just listen for anything that might suggest they're not acting freely.
So you're not just checking boxes. You're really paying attention to the whole situation.
Exactly, yeah. A good notary is observant, right?
Yeah.
Perceptive. They can pick up on those subtle cues that something might be off.
Okay, so we've covered presence, identification. We've made sure they understand the document. They're doing this voluntarily. What's the last piece of this notarial ceremony puzzle?
The last piece is witnessing the signing itself.
Right.
The notary has to either watch the signer sign, right then and there,
Yeah.
or if they've already signed it, have them acknowledge their signature, but that has to happen in the notary's presence.
So no sneaking in a document they already signed.
Right.
It's got to be right there in front of you.
Real-time verification.
Okay, and I assume this is where the notary's signature and seal come in, right? Making it all official.
You got it. That adds that official, stamp of authenticity.
All right, we've covered a lot, but I still feel like there's so much more to unpack here.
Oh, yeah. We've just scratched the surface.
I'm ready to dive deeper.
Let's do it. Let's see what other insights we can find in this handbook.
All right, lead the way. All right, so we've kind of laid the groundwork.
Okay.
We've got the basics of why those notarial ceremonies are so important.
Right.
But now I kind of want to walk through it step by step.
Oh, yeah.
See how it works in a real life situation.
All right.
So, I'm ready to put on my notary hat.
All right, perfect. Let's start with that acknowledgment ceremony we were talking about. So picture this. You're a notary. Someone comes in with a document. They need it notarized, and you've already confirmed their presence, right?
Right.
Verified their identity.
Check their ID.
Got that photo ID. What's the next step?
Okay, so we know who they are, but now we need to make sure they understand what they're actually signing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You want to have informed consent.
Right.
So this is where you as the notary would use, clear and specific language to confirm that the signer understands the document. The handbook actually gives you some sample wording for this. You might say something like, I need to make sure you understand what kind of document this is and that you are signing it for the purpose it is intended for. Do you have any questions about this document or what it means?
Interesting. So it's not about, explaining all the little legal details. It's more about making sure there's no fundamental misunderstanding.
Exactly.
It's kind of like, in a movie when the lawyer says, "Are you sure you want to do this?" There's no turning back. But a much, much less dramatic version of that, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, it's about giving the signer a chance to pause, reflect, and ask if anything's unclear.
Now, what if the signer does have questions about, what's actually written in the document?
Yeah.
Where's the line between, clarifying the purpose and giving legal advice, which a notary can't do?
Right. That's where it gets a little tricky. And that's where it requires, a bit of judgment on the notary's part.
Right.
The key is to stick to confirming that general purpose, without delving into legal interpretation.
So, for example, if someone's signing a power of attorney, the notary could say, okay, you understand that you're giving someone else the authority to act on your behalf.
Right.
But they wouldn't want to go into the details of exactly what powers are being granted.
Exactly, yeah. The notary's making sure that they're not mistaking the power of attorney for a birthday card.
Right.
But they're not there to explain every single clause.
Right. Okay. I see the difference there. So let's say the signer says, "Yeah, I get it. I understand what this document is."
Okay.
And we've established that there's no coercion, nobody's forcing them to sign it.
Right.
What's the next act in this ceremony?
Now comes the moment of truth.
The signing.
The signing itself.
Okay.
So they sign the document right there in your presence, and you as the notary are watching, making sure that that signature matches the one on their ID.
It's really like a performance, isn't it?
It is.
This one little act, putting pen to paper, and it has so much weight. And the notary's right there.
Yeah.
The impartial observer, making sure it's all done properly.
It's a powerful moment, and it really just highlights, how important the notary's role is. They're witnessing the creation of a legal agreement, and their presence helps ensure that it's authentic and valid.
So, signature's done. Do the notary grab their stamp at this point? Make it official.
Not quite yet. Before they do that, before they affix the seal, they need to complete the acknowledgment certificate. That's a key part of this because it's a formal record of the notarial act.
So it's not just about the signature. It's about documenting the whole process.
Right.
The notary's role in it.
Exactly. Yeah. That certificate typically includes the signer's name, the date of the notarial act, the type of document, a statement confirming that the signer's identity was verified, that they acknowledged the document freely.
It's like a little mini transcript of the whole ceremony.
It is.
Capturing all the key elements so that the document holds up legally.
You got it. Yeah. And of course, the notary signs and dates the certificate, adds their seal and their commission expiration date, and that's it. That final act transforms a simple signature into a legally binding, verifiable document.
All right, so we've walked through the acknowledgement. What about those unsworn statements?
You're right.
How's that ceremony different?
So the unsworn statement ceremony is a bit simpler, but it still follows a pretty similar structure.
Okay, let's break that down.
Right.
It's amazing to me how much goes into these, like, seemingly routine acts. Who knew notarizing a document could be so ceremonial?
Well, it's called Notarial Ceremonies for a reason.
Right.
There's a formality to it, a sense of, tradition and purpose.
All right. Well, let's get into those unsworn statements.
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's dive into those unsworn statements.
Right.
I'm really curious how this ceremony differs from the acknowledgement process.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, it's a little bit more streamlined, but you still have those core elements of presence, identification, and witnessing.
Okay, so our notary's ready. Someone walks in needing an unsworn statement notarized.
Okay.
And we've already, made sure they're there and checked their ID.
Yeah.
What happens next?
So this is where things diverge a bit from that acknowledgement process.
Okay.
Remember how we were talking about confirming the signer understands the document and making sure they're acting voluntarily?
Yeah.
You don't have to do those steps with an unsworn statement.
Interesting. Why is that? What makes an unsworn statement so different?
So an unsworn statement is often used for documents where the content, isn't as legally binding or significant.
Okay.
It's more about verifying who the signer is, witnessing that signature.
Gotcha.
Not necessarily about the content itself.
So it's less about making sure they fully understand everything.
Right.
And more about confirming that, yep, this person signed this, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Like, think of it this way. With an acknowledgement, you're basically saying, I know who this person is, they get what they're signing, and they're doing it freely.
Right.
With an unsworn statement, you're just saying, I know who this is, and I saw them sign this.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've got their ID, we know who they are. What's the next step in this unsworn statement ceremony?
It's signing time.
The main event.
Yeah. Just like with the acknowledgement, the signer signs in the notary's presence, notary's watching, making sure the signature matches their ID.
Okay.
And that's it for the witnessing.
Simple enough. Does the notary need to fill out a certificate for this too?
Yep. Absolutely. It's a little different from the acknowledgement certificate.
Right.
But it's still really important.
Okay.
It's that formal record of the notarial act.
Got it.
Confirming the signer's identity, the date of the signing.
So even though the unsworn statement ceremony is a little more, straightforward,
right,
the paperwork is just as important.
Exactly. Got to have that clear, verifiable record,
Right. Got to keep things transparent.
Yes.
Accountable.
Yep.
This has been so interesting. I feel like we really went from just thinking of a notary as someone who stamps papers,
right,
to really understanding they're guardians of legal authenticity.
Yes.
Accuracy.
Absolutely.
It's amazing how these little acts play such a big role in the whole legal system.
They really do. It's fascinating. These silent safeguards that help prevent fraud and just keep agreements honest.
Well, I think we've covered a ton today.
Yeah, I think
we demystified acknowledgments and unsworn statements.
We did it.
Explored those notarial ceremonies.
Yeah.
And I think we all have a better appreciation now for what notaries do. It's more than meets the eye.
Definitely.
So there you have it, folks. Our deep dive into the world of Wisconsin notaries is complete. We hope you've learned something new today. And until next time, stay curious.